Hello everyone, it's Amy, and welcome back for week 16 of Build Your Stash and Craft. And this week we are going to play with texture paste. So we needed to get our Max Patch spackle, and we needed to get some form of a scraper. And then I just pulled out some of my stencils and some of my jelly prints, and we are going to play with, and I also have a glass jar here. Now we'll do this in a minute. Let's play with the, oh, and I also pulled out my masking tape. That's why I had to get more, because it's almost gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my masking tape and I'm going to stick it on my shirt a couple of times. And what that's going to do is that's going to kind of leave the fuzzies from my shirt to make that tape like low-tack tape. Okay, so I've got this stencil, which is what do we have here? Just little paint splotches or something. And on this, I wanted to show you this little hole here at the bottom. Now I want to tape my stencil down because whenever I'm using texture paste, I like to tape down my stencil so that it doesn't move. I'm going to put it over on the edge of the paper. And then I'm just going to take some of that masking tape and I'm going to tape it down. Now I'm hoping that I've made this low tack enough, and don't press real hard onto your paper because it may rip it. This is the newsprint one that I bought, you know, just the little kids play paper from the Dollar Tree. And I'm covering up that hole because I don't want that hole to show. Maybe just put another little one here. And there we go, that's enough. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our spackle. Oops, a piece of it fell off. We don't want that. Now I did open this up a few minutes ago and I started stirring it. And then I thought, oh, I really should have shown you what it looked, exactly what it looked like when I started to stir it. There was quite a bit of fluid on the top. So you're just going to want to make sure that you get that all up from the bottom. And this actually, after I'm stirring it, seems a little bit thin. Make sure that you stir it really, really well. Get everything off the bottom because the heavy stuff's going to be on the bottom, the more solid bit. If this is a little too thin, then what you can do when you open yours is pour a little bit of that fluid into an extra little bowl. Or pour it all into a little extra bowl. And then mix it up. And then if it seems a little bit thicker, or too thick, you can put a little bit of that fluid back in there. But because I think this is going to be a little bit thin and it's going to want to run underneath, possibly run underneath of my stencil. If so, what I can do is just let it sit until the fluid comes back to the top and then pour some of that off. And that will probably, since I've got it mixed well, that would probably take a few hours to overnight to do that. But we're going to try it like this, and we're going to see if it's too thick. Or I mean, we're going to see if it's too thin. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some, and I'm just going to put it across my scraper here, about the width of what my stencil is. I'm going to move this so I don't knock it over. And then I am just going to put this at the top of my stencil. Lay it down kind of flat. And then just pull it across my stencil. Just like that. So, and I used pretty much what I had on there. Now I've got a little bit of a thin spot here. I really don't want to go back over it. I should have taped along this side of my stencil because I wasn't thinking, and I now have texture paste over here, which I didn't want it over there. But that's okay. Once something like that happens, you just go ahead and incorporate it into whatever you're going to make. Remove my tape. Okay, now this piece, maybe I can get to it here. There we go. Okay, and then very carefully just lift your stencil off and we'll see if it went underneath. Okay, towards the end here we did get a little bit that went under our stencil, so I would wish for this, see, it looks real good at the beginning, but then here we've got a little bit underneath, and so really I would like that to be just a little bit thicker. So we're going to do a little bit more of this, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it sit and let it thicken up. Now what I'm going to do with my stencil that still has texture paste on it, I'm going to rub that onto the other, or pat it I should say, onto the other side of my paper to pull some of that off, because that will give me really cool texture also. So there we go. That just puts some texture on that paper for me. And we're going to set that one aside. We'll do one more and see how it does. Now that was a larger stencil, and you're going to want to throw that in some soapy water into a little tub or something. Don't put it, I don't want that one. Let's do this one. Don't put it in your sink. You do not want to wash this down your sink. So just some kind of a large bowl or something, and then throw the water outside. Let's try this one with the circles on it, and these are smaller. Let's see if they work better. I'm going to get some more tape and put it on my shirt and make it low tack. And what I'm going to do is I want to tape off this whole side this time, because I don't want to get the texture paste all over my paper. I only want the circles. So I'm going to tape all the way around. There we go. I'm going to put it at the top and the bottom also. Because I really, if this turns out, I would rather just have my stencil on there than to have all of that extra texture paste. There we go. Okay, so let's put some more texture paste on here. This time it doesn't need to be as wide. Just need it as wide as my stencil. And again, we're going to put it on here at the top. Put this about flat. And just drag it across. There we go. And let's see if it worked better with the smaller stencil holes. Because it does seem that the smaller stencils don't bleed as bad as the larger ones do when you're using texture paste. But we'll find out. Here's the big reveal. And there we go. Now that one looks perfect as far as no bleeding. And it looks pretty cool. Now I just stuck that upside down on my paper. Pick some of that up. And you don't have to do this part. I just like to do it because I have wound up with some really cool textures by doing that. And then I wind up with less texture paste to clean off. All right, this one's little hearts that I did. I'm going to turn it over and put the paint on the bottom side because that paint will probably lift off. excuse me, it will probably lift off with the texture paste, and I don't want it to blend together with the texture paste. Okay, I'm going to tape this down. I'm going to use the tape that I already had because I just want to hold it still while I'm moving. I don't have any edges to cover up this time because my stencil covers my whole paper. And let's try this again. So, but this is fun. You can use this for so many different things. And I'm going to do this quick one more time and then upload this bit. And I am going to let this settle so that it's a little thicker, and I'm going to come back and show you how to make a decorated jar. Okay, now I really didn't put enough texture paste. And when it's really thin like this, the more you go over it like that, the bigger chance you have of getting your texture paste underneath your stencil. So you can always leave it to dry and then come back and put another layer on too. Here we go. That didn't turn out too bad. I'm going to flip this over on the other side here. And that's how that one turned out, which is really cute. And then you can go back in and you can doodle around them, you can doodle on them, you can paint them, you can do so many different things. And it's just great for your different journaling books and that type of thing to do this. So I'm going to upload this part, and I'm going to let my spackle settle, and I will be back to show you how to do a decorated jar. Okay, I'm back, and I'm going to show you a few more things that we can do with our texture paste. I let my spackle sit overnight, and it really did not separate very much. So I would suggest, if you haven't already stirred yours up, try and pour some of that, the liquid on the top, into a bowl. I like got 2 drips when I tried to pour it off this time but when I bought it, it was very separated. So that'll just make your spackle just a little bit thicker. But if you pour it into a little bowl like this and then stir it up and it seems too thick, you can add a little and stir it up again until it gets to where you kind of want it. But everything is workable. So I've stirred it, so we're going to deal with it that way. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a pretty box top and make a plain old jelly jar into something pretty. This is one I did years ago, and I put the spackle on the top and let it dry, and then I painted it and put a clear coat on it. It's got a little crack right here because it's been dropped I don't know how many times, although I do have carpet in my art room, so when they do get knocked off, which I do all the time, they hit the carpet. So it's not like if they hit a hard floor, I'm sure that they would break more than just a little chip or something. But this is just a jar. After I did this, I just put some little beads, and these were like kids beads on a string. These were a really funny green color, and those were just little white pearls, and they're the kind that don't even move on the string. And then I just painted a peacock feather on there and put a little stamp that says follow your dreams, and I use that to keep my little beads. And whenever I see these beads, because usually you can get them really, really cheap, they're the kind that are just stuck together, you know, on the string, but you know, they could be the ugliest of colors, but the thing is, once you put them on a project and you paint over them, nobody's going to know what color they started with, and they look really pretty. And I do like to put some kind of an accent around my jar here, because it kind of covers up that little dent that makes it even look like, you know, it doesn't even look like a jelly jar, you know. So, and also, you can also do the tops. This is the top of a box that I did, and I did this just to hold flower parts, and I put a little flower on here, and I also did the front of this box, so with the texture paste. And then I laid, this is just a half of a bell, a plastic Christmas bell that I cut it in half to make it look like a planner. And then when this was wet, I pushed it in there really good and then pulled it back off again. But that left me a dent to glue it when my texture paste was dry. So, and then you decorate them up however you want. Once you cover them with acrylic paint, again, like I always say, acrylic paint is plastic. Once you cover them with the acrylic paint, they're very sturdy. And this one I made years ago too. So they last a long time. What you do is just, excuse me, just fighting off a cold. Find a box that has a lid, and you can even do a box that opens up and open it up and just do it on the top lid. But then just give it a little bit of a sand so that it's not shiny. I probably should have done most of this before I got on camera, but I didn't. So just give it a bit of a sand so that the texture paste has something to stick to. And then we're just going to plop it on here. And then you might want to find something to embed in it, you know, like even a little kid's toy, like a Monopoly piece or something like that would be really kind of cute. And so there we go. That's good enough. And then I'm just going to also sand the top of the jar, and then we'll get to putting our paste on here. I'm just going to sand this up really quick and get something to clean this up, and I will be right back. Okay, I got that cleaned up and I sanded the top of my jar. I wanted to just remind you to wipe the sanding dust off of what you've just sanded to make sure that you get a good seal from your spackle paste to your project. And when you're sanding something like this, don't try and sand it all the way down to the silver. You're looking for those scratch marks and those scrapes and the differences, because that's what gives you something to hold on to. If you get it nice and smooth, you're right back to the whole reason that you sanded in the first place, was to get it roughed up a bit. So I got sanding powder in my spackle. Maybe that'll thicken it up a little bit. That's okay. I'm just going to stir this up. And then all you're going to do is grab a piece of parchment, which I forgot. Okay, you're going to want a piece of your parchment paper to sit this on. Just do a little piece, just big enough to hold them. And if you want to embed something in it, grab that item also. And you're just going to just kind of put my fingers in there like that and just hold on to it like that. You can do it however it works for you. And then you just go ahead and you just put it on there. Now this is very thin, so I think it's going to run down the edges just a little bit. And it does take a while to dry. And whether you're making your own homemade texture paste, whether you buy texture paste, or whether you use this spackle, it's going to take a while to dry because you're putting it on very thick. And then I make sure that I put it on the edges. And if you get a spot where your blue label or your blue lid shows through, it doesn't matter, because when you're done, you're going to paint it up any way that you want to and make it look pretty. So it doesn't matter if a little bit of that blue shows through. I don't put a ton on the sides. I just kind of like pat it on there because it's possibly going to run down. I like the little textures. And if your paste is thicker, it will hold that texture better. I'm not so sure if this will hold the texture or not. It might go a bit flat just because it's thin. But you can also, if you've already stirred it and you want it a little bit thicker, you can leave it open for a while and kind of let it dry. Just don't forget that you've left it open and shut it, or otherwise it's just going to get hard. And I'm just going to kind of put some little mountains on there like that. And I think that looks pretty. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to set it on my parchment before I do it. Okay, and in the top of my jar, I want to embed this butterfly. Okay, now this is paper, and it probably would stick to that if I just put it in there right now, but I'm going to want to paint that and then put the butterfly back on. So what I'm going to do, you can set that on there and then pull it off, but the problem is with that being round, it's not going to want to come back up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of masking tape, and I'm just folding it in half over my finger so that I have part here and part here that has not touched each other. So it looks like this. same way that you put a handle on the stamps that we made. And then I'm just going to press that onto the glass part so that I have a place to lift it off. And I'm going to hope that I don't get enough suction that it pulls off the tape. And then I'm just going to set that in the middle. Give it a bit of just give it a little bit of a wiggle and a press. And pull that back up. And that did not work very well, because it stuck to my paper. If you've got plastic, it works better. But what I should have done, especially since this is so thin, let it sit for a while. And when it's just starting to get hard, then do that again, what we just did. Just take it and press it on there. Press it down a little bit, and then take it off and set it aside. That's the way to do it. So, we all make mistakes sometimes, and I like to just leave them there so that you can see what I've done. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the box. I'm going to cover the box. Now, the box I'm not going to embed anything in right to start with, because I think that on this one, I'm just going to put one of my homemade flowers on top. And so I'm just going to get this on here and let it dry, and then glue my flower on top. Because they're paper, they will stick much better. They'll glue much better. It'll be okay if it's got a little bit of, if it's not flat, because the petals will make their way around any bumps or things that you have on there. And so this is the way that you can make a decorated box with your texture paste, a decorated jar, and then you just paint them up to match your room or your space. When I first started, I didn't have a room. I had a little space in our living room, and my girls had a little space right next to me. And I still had wonderful fun. Actually, I think it was more fun then, being able to craft with my girls there. Sometimes they crafted along with me, sometimes they did their homework, but they had their little craft desks right next to me, and it was very enjoyable. So if you don't have a room, don't worry about that. You can craft anywhere. As a matter of fact, I have a room, and I craft here on my kitchen table, because when Papa comes over, he likes to see what I'm working on. And my craft room is just little hallways, so he can't get in there because it's so full. And there we go. I've got my box the way that I want it. And like I said, these little bumps that are here, my flower's going to work its way around there, so I'm going to leave those just like that. I've got a little piece of box showing through there, and I'm not going to touch it. It'll get painted over. And then I'm just going to put this back in here. When these are dry, and these are going to take a while to dry. Now, I do have to say that the spackle, it does kind of dry fairly quickly. I think because it's made to put on your wall and you're in the process of doing a project, so it dry, however it's made, it does dry fairly fast. So this will probably take at least a few, like maybe 3 to 5 hours. But you can do it before you go to bed and let it sit overnight, and it should be good. We're going to have to see. I've never used this spackle before, so it's all just trial and error. Don't forget to cover back up. And I will be back to show you some more on this as soon as they're dry. Okay, I am back. It's been about 6 hours, and we're nice and dry. You can kind of tell when it's dry. This was dry to the touch a while ago, but when you feel it, it feels very cold. And when it feels very cold like that, it's still damp. And then also I have my top here. Now this is dry to the touch, but this is not completely dry yet. I did push my my circle in there and then pulled it off. I had the masking tape on it. So, and I am going to save this one to actually put together, and I won't glue this on until after I've painted. But I'm going to save this one till next week, because I want to use some of next week's, what we're doing next week with this one. So I'm going to set that one there, but that's how that fits in there after you push it in there, and then later on you can glue it, and you've got the perfect spot to glue it onto. But we'll go ahead and we'll paint this one up. Now, my box is kind of a blue and black. It's a very dark blue, and the only blue that I have is cobalt. But that one's got a dark blue with a light blue kind of running into it. So I'm going to use my wonderful, wonderful palette here, and I'm going to put a little bit of blue and a little bit more blue, because I want to try and mix enough, although this is going to be the colors, it's not going to be all one solid color, so it's okay if I have to mix more. But I am just mixing some of my Dollar Tree black in with this blue to get a nice dark, dark blue, kind of the color of the box. Yeah, I'm not real sure that this will actually be enough, but I don't know if you can see this or not, but the dark colors in there are about the color. Well, this looks very black on screen, but it's not. So I'm just going to put this on here, and then I'm going to put some of the lighter blue in with it. And this is just how easy it paints up really, really easily. And what you can do with your, since you've got all the raised parts, you can just hit the top parts with another color and just make those little parts highlighted. And this is just a really nice way to decorate up a box, to make yourself some storage in your room. And I'm not so sure, I think I probably should have maybe let this dry just a little bit longer. And it all depends on, you know, where you're at, what your weather is like. We normally heat with wood, and this would have been dry really quickly if I had the fireplace on. But it's getting to the point now where our weather's getting nice enough that you can't, if you start the fireplace, you wind up getting heated out of house and home. Even if you open the windows, you can't stand how hot it gets in here. So, and then I forget to turn the furnace on when I get up in the morning because I'm not used to it. And so it's kind of chilly in the house. It's not cold, but it's not warm either. And there's no heat circulating. So it does take a little bit longer for things to dry when it's like that. But if you live somewhere where there's high humidity, that's also going to take longer for your box to dry. So just, you know, how that all works. And what I'm going to do is I am going to stop right here, and I'll be back in a minute because you don't want to sit here and watch me do the whole thing. Okay, I have the whole thing covered, and I hit it with my blow dryer just to dry it so that I could still use the leftover paint that I had before it dried out. And so you can see it's got a coat on it. There's going to be spots because of your high spots and your low spots where you've still got some white that you didn't cover. And once you start painting it, don't go over it again while it's still damp with your paintbrush, or it will start peeling that off. It does need to get dry before you do your second coat. So if you have a hair dryer, you can dry it with your hair dryer or just let it sit and dry. But now I'm just going to go in and put on a second coat and try and make sure that I hit those little spots that we have there. And once we get the second coat on and it has dried, this is the plaster basically is what that is a plaster base of some sort. It's going to be nice and sealed in, and the acrylic is going to make it much sturdier so that it won't chip as bad. It will still, you know, this is like having something that's made out of plaster or made out of like ceramic. You know, that's kind of how it's going to react. So it could chip or break if you drop it or drop something on it. But you can always just go in, and if you do get a chip or a break somewhere at any point in time. Now I've had some of my jars that I've dropped where a piece of it's broken off, and I glue it right back on and then just go over it with a little bit of paint close to the same color. Usually when I do something like this, I don't do it just one plain solid color. I like my colors mixed. And the nice thing about that is that then if you have to go back in and touch it up, you don't have to remember exactly the color that you used. You just kind of mix in a few colors and it looks great. So, but yeah, now all those little white spots are disappearing. And then this is going to have to dry. And I was going to put a flower on top, but being the color, I really hadn't thought about what color I was going to paint it until I picked up the bottom of the box. And then I realized that I didn't want a bright color unless I wanted to paint the box, and I didn't want to paint the box. And I do kind of like this dark midnight kind of blue. So I have to kind of decide how else I want to decorate it. I think I'm going to take some of the light blue and hit the high spots and see how that looks. And remember, you can just, it's trial and error. If you don't like it, paint over it. It's not going to hurt anything. Extra layers of paint actually will just make it stronger. So, just, think of something and try it. Ooh, almost dropped it. And then if you don't like that, cover it up and try something different. Okay, it looks like I've got everything covered up. I want to make sure I get the bottom here a little bit too, if there's any white spots still left, because my paint is gone. I don't want to have to touch it up later unless I have to. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go hit this with my hair dryer and dry it, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we put the light blue on top. Be right back. Final step, and I changed my mind again. Since I didn't use the little bit of light blue paint I had put out, because I'm not going to use that, I just put a little on my finger and just rubbed it across this texture page that I had made like after I did this, and then I just flipped my stencil over and rubbed it on there. So that looks really cool. I really like that. And because I was talking about this being like midnight blue, it got me to thinking that really I would like to put the silver glitter on there, kind of like a starry sky. And so instead of putting the blue highlights on, I am just going to put my nail polish on here. And I think that that's going to look really pretty. So once I get this done, I will be done with this box. And like I said, I'm going to do the jar next week. So once I get this finished, I will get together what we're going to need for next week's project. And I'll be back and I will show you this, and I will show you what we need for next week's project. Okay, I'm back, and here is our box top that I put the glittery nail polish on after I finished painting it. It has our texture paste on it. On the sides I put just a little bit of glitter, and then I just used clear. So that's what our box top looks like. Now if I decide to put some kind of a decoration on there, I still can, but we just put that on our box and it looks really nice together. The colors wound up working really well, and I really like that to put something in. We've got our glass jar that we're going to attach this next week, but we're going to paint it first. And then we have the papers that we made with our stencils and just wiping off the texture from the stencils. So this is the things you can do with your texture paste. You can just put texture paste on your plate or on your paper, and you can draw into it. You can do all sorts of things. And then once you paint it with your acrylic paint, that's going to make it much more solid. And then even once you get them painted the way you want them, if you put a coat of your water glue on there, that will really seal it well. So I just thought I would show you on this one. I painted some of the dots, and let's see if we can possibly see how this looks. I don't know if you can see the shimmer there, but that is a nice shimmery paint on there, and that's what we're going to do next week. Next week we are going to make shimmer glue, and what we're going to need is the LA Colors eyeshadow. This is a powder eyeshadow. If you can get, this one is white, Snow White, and this one is Sunshine. So you want like a silver or a white and a gold, because they'll mix with any color paint that you have. So here comes Papa. So we're going to need 2 of these, and we're going to need stir sticks. So there's 1, 2, 3. We are going to need little paint jars, and all of this came from the dollar store. So you get 8. I've already made 4 because those were my samples, and so you get 8 of these little paint jars, and they have the really solid, sorry for the crinkles, I'm not going to be able to get one out. They have the really solid lids that snap tight, because you're going to want this to last and not dry out and not spill. So you want to get a package of those, and so that makes 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll also need your glue, your Elmer's school glue, and then you can. Okay, I had to change the ending for the last thing for your last dollar. We're not going to need this until week 19, I believe, but you won't be able to get it then. So with that last dollar, get an Easter egg coloring kit, the kind that has the little pills in it, and for the colors, and get, if you can wait till after Easter, right now you can get them at the Dollar Tree for $1, and I think you can get them for $1 at Walmart also. But if you wait till after Easter, when everybody puts them on clearance really cheap, get $1 worth. If you can get them 75% off and you can get them for 25 cents, pick up 4 boxes. If you get them for a dime, pick up 10. You don't need to keep all of these boxes, but you can keep the parts that you're going to need and use them in the future. And having at least 2 boxes is going to give you a deeper color. We're going to use this for a dye. And so pick up $1 worth of your Easter egg coloring kits. Hopefully you can get them after Easter really cheap. And if you can't get them at all, you can still use food coloring, but this is going to be a whole lot cheaper than getting food coloring. So I just wanted to add that to the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the series, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.